Hey, Steve's got a great question for us. He says, I was watching an early In Your House pay-per-view and your mic wasn't working. You sounded pretty pissed off. Was this a rib on you? Vince was actually doing play-by-play with you and the King on this episode I'm referring to. Was that a rib or was that storyline?
It was a rib from McMahon, just out of the blue. So it's like nobody told me. Very disrespectful, I thought, and amateur hourish. So, of course, Lawler went right along with it and laughed, and like it was a great idea. And then after the show's over, he said, God damn, that must have been miserable. It was. So it was a rib from McMahon. That's just his sense of humor.
It's interesting to hear some of these Vince stories that he thought were funny, but maybe everybody didn't think was so funny. Do you remember there being a fun for everyone Vince McMahon rib? Or were they all sort of with a mean spirited slant at different times?
I think they were all sort of the mean spirited slant, Conrad. I'm not looking for a shoulder to cry on, but there are a lot of times, especially in my headset where he would produce us. Then we'd go to commercial break and he'd chew me out. And the best chew outs I got were about Lawler. God damn it, JR, you got to get Lawler, pick it up. You got to get it. It's on you. It's on me. You got direct communication with him on your headset. How come it ain't on you? You're producing this shit. So, yeah, I'm glad I don't have to do those days. Tony Khan is wonderful.
Yeah.
He don't interrupt shit. He'll help you. He'll give you something, and you know where he wants to go by what you hear. But I'm not dependent on his feedback to do the broadcast. But his lines, he'll give me a line or a point of emphasis that he wants underscored, and I listen and I do it. So it's just different styles. Producers should be the greatest soundbite people ever. Get in, get out, help your talent, and get the fuck out of their way.
Well said. I love that. Francis Reyes is with us, and he says, did you ever get a chance to meet the other famous JR? Talking about JR Ewing from Dallas. Did you ever meet that character?
I met him one time, and I was astonished by his eyes. They were glassy, kind of cartoon eyes. It was kind of at the end of the day when you found out how sick he was, it was sad. But he wasn't impressed with me, and consequently, I lost my impression of him. But he was all right. He shook my hand, patted me on the back, and he said something along the lines of, so you're the JR I've been hearing all this about, whatever.
Where did you meet him?
Dallas.
Were you like at an airport, or did he come to him at a show, or
no? I think it was at like a signing.
Oh, I got you, like a Comic-Con type thing.
Yeah.
Of course, it was the real life Larry Hagman. That's who we're talking about. He portrayed the character J.R. Ewing on Dallas back in the day, which was a huge hit. Sadly, he passed away in November of 2012. So he's been gone for 12 years now. Can you believe that?
Hard to believe, right? I mean, he was a nice guy. He just had a line of people there to see him,
right?
And I know how that feels. So we just had a very brief handshake, a couple of laughs, and I went back to my table and he stayed at his. Pretty simple.
Man, you want to talk about a crazy idea I've never even considered. Jason has a great question here. If Magnum TA would have been able to wrestle into the mid to late 90s, how well would he have fit in during the Attitude Era? And how huge would a Magnum versus Austin feud have been? I don't even consider that as a possibility, but that is an excellent idea to think about. Like, what if? Because when you take a look, he's only 65 years old now. So 20 years ago, he would have been 45. He could have totally been a part of the Attitude Era. In an alternate universe, is there a dream opponent for that era of the WWE with Magnum TA? I mean, him and Undertaker, him and Mankind, him and Rock, him and Austin. What stands out for you as a dream match for Magnum TA in the
Probably Magnum and Austin. They're both hard hitting wrestlers. They weren't gimmick guys. That would have been a hell of a contest. I would have loved to call that. It's just sad that it didn't happen. And I see Terry Allen, aka Magnum TA. One of the reasons I get motivated about going to these shows, like WrestleCon this Saturday, midday, is that I get to see guys like Magnum TA that I haven't seen in maybe until the last big autograph thing. It's just great to see all these people. But that would have been a match. Now, I'm not downgrading the other options that you mentioned. Foley, if Magnum was a solid baby face, which he would have been against Foley, I think. Foley would have more of an edge, if nothing else. Undertaker didn't care if he worked with a baby face or a heel. He had his match. He had down what he was going to do. I don't know who else you mentioned there, but it would have been a dream match. I mean, that would have been massive money. It might have topped the money that Magnum would have made with Hogan. So
it's interesting to think about that because it just feels like no, that couldn't have happened. But age-wise, man, in an alternate universe, it totally could have happened.
yeah,
You know, it would have been interesting to see him, and whether it was WCW or the WWE. It's one of those great what ifs.
Yep.
Let's do a deep cut here. Ants in My Eyes Jones, what a great name that is, says, do you have any good Boyd Pierce stories? Great to hear you at the desk for the main events again. I agree with that. We love hearing JR on the call, but Boyd Pierce, you got any good stories about Mr. Pierce?
He's a nice guy. He welcomed me with open arms, and I took his place on two fronts. I replaced Richard Bowden and started ring announcing, and Boyd was doing some ring announcing, so he was out of that. Then Cowboy made me his cohort in commentary, which was a big break for me, but not so much for Boyd because he got relegated to being the ring announcer. He never showed any angst or any animosity or jealousy or anything to me. Boyd had his suits made when a lot of us were going to, Macy's. And it don't take much to shop for a blue blazer. But old Boyd would have his suits made, real colorful and all that stuff. He did a thing in the locker room where he would bend his knees like in a football stance and start hunching like a dog, breeding another dog. He did it all the time. He'd throw his teeth out and do the dog raunch, whatever. I don't even call it. I've never seen it before or since. But Boyd loved that little impersonation, which was sick and terrible, but it was Boyd. He always had a handful of gimmicks, not gimmicks like drugs, gimmicks like pencils, calendars, all kinds of things like that, because he sold them. That was part of his job, was selling products. Conrad, you had guys call on you, I'm sure, where you want to buy a calendar with your name on it and all your stores stuff, Yeah. So he sold all that stuff, and it was endless. But he was a nice man. He just was a little freaky. Nice man, and he had built a hell of a reputation in Texas as the preeminent ring announcer. So he did stuff for the Von Erichs and for, I think he did stuff for, Paul Bosch. So he stayed busy along with his traveling job. He could travel and just happened to be in the town where the wrestling was happening as a part of his route that week. So I enjoy working with Boyd. He's funny and really good. Had a voice that cut through the clutter. That's imperative for an announcer, especially a ring announcer.
Yes.
You got to cut through the clutter, and he did.